I'm putting a trigger warning at the beginning of this video because there are mentions of suicide in this story, but other than that, it is a very good story. I hope you enjoy. Today's story was written by Reddit user Munin Crow. So, what have we got here? Officer Yamar asked as he crossed the holotape into the dingy hotel room. His skin crawled as he felt the smoky, musty air of the backwater hotel. Its single bed scorched in small holes from spent Nico sticks, and he felt the ever-damp, mustard yellow-stained carpet that proliferated the building. Trigorti, the analysis declared. Mid-40s, male, doesn't look like he put up a fight, almost like he terminated himself. Yimgar fluttered his brow antennae at the thought. Self-termination? Trigorti? That makes no sense. One of the biggest up-and-coming crime bosses in the sector wouldn't just self-terminate. Well, the metal slug lodged in his brain disagrees. The analysis reached in deep with the implement, and after some work, freed a bullet he then dropped into a case. Where are his guards? Yimgar asked. The Yoktali crime gang wouldn't just leave one of their leaders to rot in a hotel. They don't have dead, they just disappear. Haven't a clue, detective, but here is the termination weapon. He pointed to the gun used, now laying on the table. Looks to be human-made, older model, but I won't know how old until I get it to the lab. Mechanical interface bypassed the weapons lock on the premises. Yimgar nodded, but then something caught his eye. What's that on the other side of the Trigorti, in his other hand? The analysis glanced at him and leaned over the cold corpse of the crime boss. He had to roll him a bit to access the other arm, and pried a thick tablet of animal skin and thin wood sheets free. He looked it over, recognizing it as an archaic data tablet. The humans called it a book, though few aliens will still have the concept after everything was digitized. May I see it? Detective Yimgar asked. You can keep it, the analysis handed it off. It's not relevant to the investigation. Yimgar grunted, taking a final look around the room. What a filthy, vile place to die in. With that final thought, he escaped the hotel and out into the cleansing rain of the city. It was another hour before he reached his residence, where he took a cleansing sonic shower, ate his dinner, and settled into his relaxation pod to ponder the human book. It was old leather, well preserved, and cared for with great attention. But by the tiny fragments of red blood and dirt, suspected it had quite the history, and Yimgar suspected that either Trigorti had acquired this from a dead rival in the arms market, or from a victim. Human books were valuable, and contained concept well beyond the galactic norm. Sipping his still writhing Belgorian bloodworm tea, he gingerly flipped open the book, and began to read. He skimmed the first few pages, which contained the usual scripture of Deathworld cultures. It told of an all-powerful being, whose tendrils reached across the void, igniting nothingness into beacons of his power. The being carved the heavens from the universe and crafted its territory, and on them drafted a legion of minions with the single command to increase and multiply, to fill the world and subdue it. The age-old mantra of the Deathworld: kill, consume, multiply, conquer. From these beings he picked his champions, a single race upon which to champion his cause. Raised from the waters, like in many galactic cultures, these beings were gifted powers from their creator. Yimgar noted in mild curiosity that most Deathworlder religions emphasize their strength, such as with the Volalikai, or the plague mastery of the Kitwan death puppets. But unlike the handful of Deathworlder cultures that made it to space, each so tyrannical that they were feared and extinguished by the galactic community, or rendered incapable of ascending to power ever again, humanity's mind was touched by the void, their souls filled with the very spark of their maker. Their creator's gift was madness, an insatiable curiosity that fueled their proliferation across their world, sparked and accelerated thousands of wars to apocalyptic levels, and saw their civilization advance hundreds of years ahead of the galactic norm in a single generation. Their creator imbued in them domination over all his legion of beasts and plague, taught them to tame the planet and devour it, and they were set upon the galaxy. He had broken them into tribes that they would fight, and only the strongest and smartest would survive. How barbaric, he mused. He had never met a human in person, but believed he had their measure. They were known to have many gods, each championing some tribe, each killed off by humanity, their temples erased, their very memory drowned and buried and burned. They killed off their gods and found new ones, before killing those off as well. Few human gods seemed to remain stranded beneath the ocean or in the earth, or beyond the boundaries beyond the universe. They were all impossibly ancient gods, and just as mad. They had each tampered with humanity, forged their empires, conquered their enemies, and avoided execution by humanity. Archaeological research into Deathworlder cultures was practically taboo, and done only under the most stringent of security protocols, lest the researcher be driven mad. Deathworlder religion, it turned out, was a weapon, and while many had forced their old gods on the subjugated worlds, humanity had found a way to make others want it. They wanted the glory of the all-knowing, all-winning being, to be a part of the madness masquerading as generosity, when it only truly served humanity's expansion. The human god was shapeless, unknowable, appearing before his chosen in a myriad of ever-shifting forms. He peeled the mind back and spoke through the very world, and through his scripture and his words were unbreakable law, except when they weren't, and it served his will. And humanity had gotten very good at bending words without breaking them, and it had helped them inject themselves into every facet of galactic society to devastating economic effect. For wherever there was a human, so was their god, scratching at the fabric of society, worming his way in. He was infectious, a cancer in the galaxy, starting with the colonies and seeping into senates, drawing the races under his banner to his way of thinking, and they liked it, and saw that it was good. When humanity sundered the Atroxian homeworld, they had lapped around the system, taunting their once invaders with a barrage of human broadcasts. The Atroxian sun had been depleted in the destruction of their homeworld through alchemical godspeak, and the galaxy rang with the echo of the pirate race's doom, with much celebration. The humans had a penchant for old gods, even twisting them as they used them. By defying their creator, humanity had become his equal, clothed in the skin of their kin. Through the binding of their alchemical god, they changed themselves, adapting to environments far beyond even the Deathworlder norm. They flew the skies of gas giants, and swam the super-pressured oceans, and lived in worlds of wire and light. They were out-competing the rest of the galaxy as they killed their enemies, consumed worlds and stars, multiplied like the most ferocious of plagues, and conquered the hearts and minds of the survivors. And they made it look good and just. What Ymgar noticed was a peculiarity. Humanity had a penchant for killing their gods, and the bodies were stacked high, but among all their hidden or imprisoned old gods, of yellow and red and black, was a single fact. Their creator, whom they defied and became his equal, had survived. They still declared their fealty to him, but operated as they willed, and so they left each other alone, and their creator seemed to accept this. "An old god," Ymgar muttered, realizing at once how the rest came to be. These entities creeping at the borders of reality had likely gone through the same cycle. Conquerors all, they had devised the most ruthless species in galactic history, before fading away to sleep and scheme beyond their creator's reach. The more he read of the old leather book, the more he began to feel the old god's words take hold, claws digging into his brain, sorting and organizing his thoughts. He was a just god, a good god, despite the many atrocities committed in his name, despite the apocalypses imparted upon his own creations which weathered the storm, the world-ending floods, freezes, an era of ash, before escaping into the void themselves to visit similar destruction upon others. They rained destruction on neighbouring planets to make it habitable, venting atmospheres and building mass. They uplifted a moon into a giant computer, with which they planned their galactic conquest, and once they acquired the technology of aliens, brought their vivid nightmares to life. The detective noticed his tea had grown cold, and the street outside had darkened with night. Getting up to revitalise the shivering bloodworm, he wondered. For an insane species, they do quite a bit of good. The thought surprised him, as Deathworld occults had become quite a problem for the Galactic Senate, and the proliferation of Deathworld god books had been strictly regulated to prevent their infection of proper society. He had been part of the last couple planetary purges, finding the insane before they could enact their schemes. But now he wondered if he had been right. Were the insane being purged just ordinary people? What good could they have done if they had lived their lives? Humans were known to retaliate for small offences, sometimes to catastrophic effect, and yet also were known for the rebuilding of worlds. Entire planets had been saved from the machinations of an angry cosmos. These worlds would rebuild in a manner similar to humans, with human methods and purpose, and they were slowly eating away at the cosmic balance, as a new empire rising against the Galactic Senate. Suddenly, the weight of Ymgar's sins came down on him, as he considered all the damage he had done over the course of his career. It was a stray thought, but it hooked him, and dragged him down a spiral of lamentations and justifications that must have lasted for hours. He could feel the ghosts of his victims in the room with him, condemning him for his hatred and crimes. It was his hate for himself, and inability to escape it, to undo it. And he saw in the dark corner of the room, with a kind and pleasing smile, the human god. The sun peered through the window as Detective Omar crossed the holotape into the clean and immaculate room. His skin crawled as he saw the blood splatter across the kitchen, spread from a single point. So, what have we got here? The smell of rapid decay prominent with Traxian biology filled his nostrils and made him want to puke. Detective Ymgar, the analysis declared. Spoke to him yesterday. Looks the same as with the Tregorti too. No fight. He just terminated himself. Didn't think he had it in him. Omar raised an eyebrow at the thought. Self-termination? Really? That makes no sense. He was one of our best detectives. Why would he commit suicide? Suicide. Odd word. Well, the metal slug lodged in his brain says so. The analysis plucked the bullet from the withering remains of the detective and dropped it into a case. Didn't know he had a slug thrower. Huh. Smith & Wesson Model 686, I believe. Collector's piece. The detective nodded, but then something caught his eye. What's that he's holding? The analysis glanced at him and pulled the book free. Same book as yesterday. Died while holding it, just like the Tregorti. May I see it? Detective Omar asked. The analysis frowned, but sighed and handed it over. It was an old book, leather-bound and stained with blood, most of it fresh now. Not many books still existed in the galaxy, not since most species had moved to digital formats. While it may not have been relevant to the case, Omar was curious as to what was on Ymgar's mind when he died. He flipped over the book and read the cover and simply remarked, "Ah, the Bible."